Fallout from President Obama's executive action on immigration continues this week. What will the congressional response be? Nebraska Congressman and member of the House Appropriations Committee, JEFF FORTENBERRY, is here to tell us. And later, chairman of Special Olympics, entrepreneur and author of the new memoir, Fully Alive, Discovering What Matters Most, Tim SHRIVER joins us to talk about his journey to find his place within the Kennedy clan and the heroes who helped him find his true calling. And finally, they're burning up the Billboard charts with their new Christmas CD. We visit the St. Paul's Choir School, the only Catholic choir school for boys in the U.S., to discover their secrets. The Thanksgiving edition of The World Over begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you in the United States and the world over. Happy Thanksgiving. A lot to share with you. Congressman JEFF FORTENBERRY, Special Olympics Chairman Timothy SHRIVER, and the boys of the St. Paul's Choir School are straight ahead. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send us a tweet. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. I'll be live tweeting throughout the show in between the turkey. If you'd like to drop us an email, we're at worldover@EWTN.com. Let's get right to this Thanksgiving edition of The World Over. Last week, President Obama announced executive action on immigration reform without congressional input. The plan would effectively halt deportation for at least 5 million illegal immigrants already in the United States. Supporters of the president hailed the move as a much-needed step forward in the absence of congressional action. Critics immediately condemned it as an unconstitutional power grab by an imperial president. To discuss, we're joined by the congressman from the 1st District of Nebraska, a member of the House Appropriations Committee via satellite from Lincoln, is Congressman JEFF FORTENBERRY. Congressman, thank you for being here.
Good to be with you, Raymond. Thank you.
Now, Congressman, this would affect upward of 5 million and upward immigrants already here. What is to be done with these people? If you don't do something like this, the president and the administration says this is a very small step to try for congressional action. You'd say what?
Well, you're right that this is a very thorny problem, and there's a lot of purposeful ambiguity in immigration law currently. But let's take the action for what it is. The president's plan for executive amnesty is both divisive as well as an abuse of his power. He has said over and over again that I am president, I'm not a king, I do not have authority to do this, and yet he proceeded with it anyway. And so this is a very significant distraction from a rightful, robust, and reasonable debate about how immigration policy should be shaped in Washington.
The president is responding now to the charges that he's overstepped his authority, and he's saying, look, he's just trying to get you guys, Congress, to act. Listen.
My response is pass a bill. The truth is that the Senate did a good job in crafting a bipartisan bill that would have greatly improved our immigration system. And my preference is for a legislative solution to this problem. That didn't happen.
What's wrong with this approach?
Well, again, the president has repeatedly said he does not have this authority. He is a constitutional scholar. And in Constitutional Law 101, the Congress makes the law, the president executes the law. He has the constitutional duty to faithfully execute the law, not recklessly abrogate the law. And with a stroke of the pen here, he has vastly changed, in a most significant, unprecedented way, current law. That simply is an overstepping of his authority. And frankly, as I said before, it's going to distract from the immigration debate because now it's about him. The other problem here is it's fundamentally unfair, what he has done. It's unfair to people who are standing in line, who are waiting to come to America through legal means to participate in this great American tradition. A hallmark of who we are as a people is having a robust and vibrant an orderly immigration process. But when you have chaos and disorder with it, or it changing through the stroke of a pen, you undermine the ability of the country to be generous in the first place. It's also unfair to the working poor, by the way, who will have more downward pressure on their wages and further lack of opportunity. It's also unfair to hospitals and schools that will see rising costs, and this may create additional incentive for a surge of people to come over the border. This is why this has to be addressed in a more orderly process, which is the responsibility of the legislative branch. The Senate has passed a comprehensive bill. The House refused to take that up, but we have passed a number of immigration changes, components to what I think would be a reasonable step forward to addressing the problem of how we create an orderly process for people who want to come here and change some of the dynamics in our current immigration law that would streamline this, including more robust both border security and interior enforcement. Remember, the draw for economic migrations is by employers who willfully violate immigration law and create a magnet here and thereby exploit poor and vulnerable persons. I think that's wrong.
Congressman Fortenberry, you are on the House Appropriations Committee. Some have said, we'll just defund this. And I've spoken to a number of Republicans who said, we're going to defund any effort the president moves in this direction without congressional permission. Can you defund this executive order? It seems, from everything I'm reading, that this is mostly funded by fees and therefore sort of immune from the appropriations process.
That's a subtle point. Yes, it is funded by fees that are collected from, again, persons who are receiving these benefits. We could change that. We could change the way the process works. But again, the president has to sign that in the law, and he won't. He'll veto it. So it's another problematic impasse that we have here. We have to find a way to keep the government running while shutting down the president's plan for executive amnesty and move toward the right type of robust and vibrant debate as to how we increase border security, increase interior enforcement, streamline legal processes, which should include humanitarian exceptions for persons who are here, who have no recourse to go back to anywhere else or who are in vulnerable circumstances. And then the fourth component of a good immigration policy reform would also be foreign policy considerations that help address the need that has caused economic migration, creating hope and opportunity in other countries through food security and a revival of the rule of law and stabilized opportunity in other places, particularly in our neighborhood in Central America.
Congressman, just to return to the point, what would you do if the president isn't going to sign any legislation defunding these efforts? What is the GOP's response then?
Well, there's basically three things you can do. Again, pass a piece of legislation that I assume a new Senate would also pass, but the president would veto. You can pass a funding bill that keeps the government running but not fund certain components of this. We'll have to see how the political dynamics play out and whether or not the president would accept that or not. He probably wouldn't. So then we would not, in addition to what's going to be called an omnibus, a major funding bill for the government, we would exclude portions of that apply here. Those areas would be funded on what we call continuing resolution basis. And that creates, again, a dynamic whereby we continue to debate the issue. The third option is the court system. The House of Representatives is currently engaged in a lawsuit with President Obama because he has changed the health care law substantively 23 times, picking people that it applies to and then excluding others who it doesn't apply to, and that's unfair. So to take it out of the politics, the dynamic of politics of health care, and pushing it to the judicial branch, to me, was a wise move. But again, that has drawbacks, and the court system might not pick it up. It frankly is problematic. All of this is very problematic. I wish the president, if the president felt so strongly about this to address the nation, he could have made his very cogent and clear points, which I thought he gave a very good speech the other night, and urged Congress to act on certain components of this rather than saying, I'm going to do it to you anyway, and I dare you to try to do something against me. That is the president versus the people. The people are represented by the House of the Representatives, and the president has grabbed power for himself over the House. And that's just really simply problematic and deeply wrong, and it's a flawed form of reasoning.
Congressman, in our final minutes, the Bishops' Conference, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, has roundly supported the president's initiative here. They say this is an initial step and that all of Congress should respond. Your response to that?
Well, immigration, we have to remember when we debate immigration policy, it is about creating a just and vibrant, orderly process. When there is chaos and disorder, whether that be at your border or on interior enforcement, you undermine the ability of our country to be just and generous in the first place. There are about 1 million people who legally immigrate here every year. Right. And by this action, you're suggesting that if you willfully have violated the law without good reason, you basically have a reason to stay. That gives further incentive for illegal behavior. It is unfair to people who are trying to come here legally. It has huge ramifications, again, for cost in society. And again, it's begging a constitutional question as to whether or not the president has abused his authority. What if the next president comes along and says, I don't like this or that, and through executive action undoes it? Mm-hmm. This is unprecedented in its scope, and it has to be confronted by the Congress, which will try to come up with innovative ways to at least continue the reasoned political debate about immigration policy, but also try to put a hold on his executive amnesty plan. Mm-hmm. But it also comes down to the people who are saying a president can't grab power like this. This is not the American experience. In our final minute, Congressman Fortenberry, some have suggested to me that the bishops have a financial incentive in that they receive $65.9 million of federal monies to help those who are migrants and to get them settled here in the United States. Do you think that has viability? I've laid out clearly what I would do about immigration reform in our conversation, but I will tell you this. I spend a considerable amount of my resources in my office working with people who are caught in some type of immigration policy difficulty. I used to sit on the board of directors on one of our major refugee resettlement agencies here in Lincoln. We have a whole host of new Americans in our community. By the way, the Yazidi community, the ones who are under such pressure from ISIL in the Middle East, the largest number of refugees of the Yazidi community exists right here in my neighborhood in Lincoln, Nebraska. We've known them for a number of years and have worked with them on a whole variety of immigration cases. So it's really two questions. Again, the law is designed to set up order, justice, and therefore, thereby, compassion for people in need. But the face of immigration always has to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, but you can't undermine the rule of law or you'll collapse the entire system. I don't know what the bishop's incentives are. I know obviously they are trying to meet the needs of very poor and vulnerable persons, and that needs to be commended. We also have the job, though, of ensuring that chaos doesn't reign, that a president doesn't abuse his power, and that we do have a system that is based upon justice and therefore is empowered to be compassionate toward those in need. Congressman Jeff Fortenberry, thank you so much for being here. Pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much. Up next, the chairman of Special Olympics and the author of a new memoir, Timothy Shriver, is here to tell us how he found wisdom and inspiration from some of the most vulnerable among us. Our Thanksgiving edition of The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. My next guest is a member of the United States equivalent of the royal family, an accomplished educator, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. He currently leads the Special Olympics organization, started by his mother, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, in 1968. Today it serves nearly 4 million athletes in 170 countries. For Tim Shriver, it was not politics or even JFK that led him to discover his vocation, but another Kennedy and a series of unlikely teachers that showed him the way. He's the author of an affecting new memoir, Fully Alive, Discovering What Matters Most. Please welcome to the program, Tim Shriver. Thank you for being here. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much.
Now, you write in the book, and when your brother Mark was here, he told me about your mother, Eunice Shriver, opening the backyards of your homes, even when your father was a diplomat in other countries, to children with disabilities. What was it that drew her to this mission?
Well, I think in a way she had an instinctive commitment to what matters most in her own way. I think she had grown up with a sister who had special needs at a time when there was enormous stigma, fear, the idea of caring for, valuing that life was unknown really in the culture, but she was told by her mother and father, take care of your sister Rosemary, include her, welcome her, make sure she's a part of everything. And yet so you know, she could see two things. One, this enormous love and joy she had with her sister, and then this enormous shame and stigma that she saw out in the outside world. And she set out with her life to attack the stigma and to promote the love. And so she'd go expert knocking, doctors, policymakers, politicians, and they would all say, you know, Eunice, I'm sorry. And she said, you know, to heck with you, I'll do it myself. And in that energy comes from faith, comes from anger, comes from love. She found the outlets in the simple acts of welcoming children to her house.
Camp Shriver.
Camp Shriver, but they came, Raymond, from institutions. Some of them came having been separated from their parents at birth. These were the children that no one wanted. And here we were, I was a little boy, and to me all they were was a team for a kickball game, you know, or a group to ride ponies with. Or,
What did you think when these children came?
Well, you know,
never
I think
met
in
before.
retrospect, I remember these scenes. You know, children remember only scenes when they're very young. I mean, I was only 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old when this was getting underway. But I remember seeing them arrive, and I remember the specialness of these moments when they'd get off the buses. I didn't know where the buses were coming from. How could I? I didn't know the trouble and struggle that these children had experienced. But what I did see was that when they were in my house, my mother was excited, the volunteers were excited, I was excited. We'd spin off every morning and sing, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. And I think to myself, you know, how did she know that if you're happy and you know it, you'd be there? This book is my attempt to remind people and to invite people. When we think of Thanksgiving, we think of the holidays, we think of Christmas. You know, everybody wants to give somebody a tie or a sweater.
Please,
or
no more ties.
Cufflinks or cologne or whatever it is, we all end up giving one another. My hope is that this book will invite people to give to one another meaningful experiences that really matter most.
And I want to get to some of those that you discovered in the course of your life. Tell me about Rosemary, your aunt. She figures prominently in this book in your life. She was had some disabilities early on, but she was fully engaged in the life of this family. And then at 23, your grandfather attempts to help her. Tell us what happened and how you come to know her later.
I mean, I think what you have to remember is that Rosemary was born at a time when The Black Stork was the film that had come out 2 years before her birth, encouraging women to allow their newborn children to die. 6 years after her birth, Oliver Wendell Holmes, the Supreme Court Justice, pens the famous decision authorizing the institutionalization and sterilization of people with intellectual disabilities. 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. Imbecile, idiot, moron, retard. These words echo in the hearts and minds and souls of people who have touched this population as these enormous sources of pain. But Rosemary came, and what did her mother and father say? You will stay at home, you will be treated like the other children, and we will do everything we can to help you. When it came time, and she was, you know, they looked for schools, there weren't any. They looked for doctors, they were frustrated. They looked for convents to which they sent Rosemary. And finally, you know, the irony of her life is that she was the happiest just before this operation, by all accounts. Her letters to her father, they were together in England together. She was at a convent outside of London, caring for younger children, feeling very fulfilled. And she had to leave London because of the war. And when she came back to the United States, she was alone, she was frustrated, and my grandfather was told there was a new Nobel Prize given to these doctors who have come up with this innovative way to help people, and it's going to cure Rosemary, it's going to make her better, it's going to fix her challenges. And unfortunately it didn't. It backfired and became one of the great sadnesses of his life. And of my mother's too, and of all her brothers and sisters. But the sadness, the struggle, the frustration ends up producing in a kind of almost mystical transformation, this bursting forth of energy and commitment to ending that shame that produced all that pain and isolation.
And she was isolated for a good long period. She lived in an institution in Wisconsin. You come to know her, though. Eunice, your mother, opens the doors of the house, invites her in. How did that happen after such a long period of...
I think my mother went to her brother, who had become the President of the United States, and said, it's time. It's time we break this secret, you know. And I like to think of every family needing to do this. You know, there's all these great lines in literature about families being this and happy families and this. I think families tend to all harbor secrets, things that they're afraid to share.
Yeah.
This was one of those things that my mother said finally to her brother president, you know, you've won now, maybe she said. Let's share this news. Let's end this stigma. The President of the United States needs to welcome someone with intellectual disabilities to the White House. We need to tell our family story, and we need to break the doors open. Rosemary all of a sudden becomes a guest, a frequent one, 4, 5, 6 times a year. I'm a little boy. She comes to our house, and there she is.
Can't speak a lot.
She does not. A few words here and there. But she loved to eat. She loved desserts. She loved to swim.
No diet food?
No diet food. More, you know, after the ice cream was cleared, she'd say more ice cream and these kinds of things. And she'd smile, and she'd play cards, and she'd take walks. And she had a simplicity and an honesty, if you will, that reminded me over and over again. I can't say I saw it at that time in my life, but I could tell there was something different about the way in which she made our family feel than anyone else.
And what of that experience, seeing her in the midst of your family, what did you take from her? What lingers now?
Well, it took me a long time, to be honest, to learn what she meant. I can't say it was quick, you know. I had to fail myself. I had to struggle. I had to find my way to the mystics. I had to find my way to the cloud of unknowing and to Teresa of Avila and to Irenaeus, other great...
Who all weave their way in and out of this narrative, by the way.
They all come in, all these saints, not because I'm trying to, you know, give credit to saints, but because they guided me. The cloud of unknowing telling me, you know, and Eckhart, you know, that there's a presence of God within you. And to start relaxing a little bit. And I could all of a sudden see that in Rosemary, this was a woman who didn't have to fight the world.
Yeah.
And the mystics were kind of saying the same thing. Don't fight the world. God loves you already. It is all within, you know. This gift of love has been already given to you. You don't have to go out and earn it. And so slowly over time, falling in love with my wife, Linda, and realizing that she too was trying to tell me, don't worry, you don't have to impress me, you just...
And yet there was that expectation. Being part of this Shriver-Kennedy clan,
right.
You've got to earn your way to the table, you've got to accomplish something great so that you earn the title.
I think every family does that. I'm sure you were raised by a mom and dad who had great hopes for you, and they've been fulfilled, I'm sure.
Well,
but
I don't know about that.
At some level, the mistake I think we all make is that we tend to think that other people's expectations for turning us into something are more important than the expectations we find within ourselves. And I think what Rosemary taught, what this book is about, is me coming to understand that the greatest expectations I had to fulfill were God's expectations that were unique to me. And I didn't have to become my uncles or my mother or my father. I didn't have to become Raymond. I just had to become Tim. And even though that's a little bit embarrassing to say, and it's a little bit self-absorbed sounding, I think it was actually the most selfless thing I could learn.
You say in the book you were reluctant to embrace the family business.
Yeah.
Special Olympics. What happened? What changed that? Was this all part of that journey?
I think once I found that a sense of my own interior peace, and I grounded myself in a spiritual practice of silence and prayer, I found that I could now re-enter into a social or a cultural setting where people would come up to me and say, oh, you're Eunice's son, or you're President Kennedy's what? You know, which one are you? I think as a younger man, I couldn't handle that. I needed to run away, you know. Let me find myself. I don't want to be treated as a number in a big puzzle. I wanted to be treated as me. And when I finally got to the point where I could feel my own sense of strength, I thought to myself, this is great work, this Special Olympics stuff.
You make reference in the book, near the end, you coin a term called diffabilities, as opposed to disability, which we always affix to people with any little thing that's different from us. Why diffability, and what have you learned about diffability and the impact of spending time with these people, even if on the surface they don't seem to quite meet the measure of the rest of the world or what the world expects?
Well, I think if there's one thing that people of faith could agree on, it's that the divine, God, has created things, and they are good. All of them. No exceptions.
Yeah.
God, as one friend of mine told me when she was pregnant for the first time, does not make mistakes. If that's true, if everybody is good, then we can't justify labeling people with negative labels. We can't justify saying, I've found out what's wrong with Arroyo. He's got a different kind of X or Y. And it's a diss, you know, and walk around with a diss on my name. I mean, it's just a fundamentally non-religious attitude. I know why we do it. We do it sometimes for very good reasons, to try to help a particular group or to try to address the needs of a particular group. But in the end of the day, the spiritual, the religious worldview is everybody has ability. They're all different and they're all beautiful. And I think we need to help language that reminds us of that every day. Otherwise, we fall into the trap of treating one another negatively, I'm afraid.
You talk about some of the people here who you've encountered through Special Olympics and how they've changed your life. Can you briefly tell us about one or two of them and,
well, I think
what they did, what you took from them?
The reason I tried to put this into a book form, Raymond, is because I think we overlook often the gifts of people who are outside the mainstream. Take Donald Page. Donald's born, healthy little baby, gets a very significant illness, has multiple seizures, almost dies several times, raised by a dad who's a dairy farmer and a mom who's a full-time mom in rural Ireland. Barely survives, becomes a full-time job for this mom and dad, gets to school, finds a coach, is encouraged to learn a sport in Special Olympics, the beanbag lift. He gets his moment. He's in front of 1,500, almost 2,000 people in an arena in downtown Dublin. His mom and dad leave that morning. He's on the bus with the other athletes. And he sits in front of an audience, and his job is to lift this bag and move it from here to here. And he starts, and I'm sitting in the front row, and I've got celebrity, you know, the president of Ireland is next to me, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, this is going to be terrible. He's got such significant challenges. He starts, he moves the hand. It takes him several minutes just to get the hand onto the ball, onto the softball. And by the time he gets it halfway along, the crowd is mesmerized. And I talked to his dad, and he said in the background, he said he was thinking, I hope they give him time. All he needs is a bit of time. 18 minutes it took him to move that object just across the table, and the place explodes. And the place is on fire. It could have been the Final Four. And I think what they were saying, what that crowd was saying, and what Donald was saying, you know, with all the guts and courage to do his best, that was all he had. And it was enough. You know, they knew they'd seen an athlete that was as good as Pele or LeBron James or Tom Brady or anybody else. You have to stop and pause and look to see Donald. You can't rush through life and notice him.
Well, that's what I love about this book. It really is about seeing beyond the surface and finding the great gift that's there if you take the time to look.
We have to slow down a bit to do it, and that's why I hope this book is, in some ways, it's a thank you letter to all these athletes, to Donald, to Daniel Thompson, to Loretta Claiborne, to my Aunt Rosemary, to my mom, people who slowed down in life, who looked me in the eye, who reminded me that I was also a child of God, to Jean Vanier, the great saint, living saint of this community. These are human beings who are not on the headlines.
I want to talk for a moment about, while you bring this up, and as I read through this, your thoughts on this prenatal testing that we're seeing now, where people are testing for disability. Your thoughts on the morality of that, and what would you tell a parent who's considering this or perhaps has already received a diagnosis?
Well, I think the best we can do is fight very hard to remove the sense in which these people are liabilities, valueless or less valued, you know, because when a mom or a dad receives a diagnosis, it terrifies them. And the reason most of the time it terrifies them is because they think this will be a horrible burden for me, for the child, for my family. They think their life will be derailed. That's wrong. We know that's wrong. We know that's wrong. So my hope is that As the testing grows, as the fear of difference grows, as the fear of not being tall enough or strong enough or rich enough, or all that is just the tyranny of normalcy. Human beings have never thrived in that kind. None of us can thrive because none of us are normal. No. None of us are the same. We have to help parents. I mean, I don't mention in the book, but when my uncle was alive, Ted Kennedy and Sam Brownback, a conservative and a liberal,
right, I was just about to mention that bill,
got together to do a bill that requires that women who have a prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome or other genetic disorders receive scientifically accurate information about the life course of these people. I'm still working to try to get this information out so that obstetricians will share it with moms and dads at that moment, because we can't deny it's a difficult moment.
Sure, but you want to give people the full spectrum of what the life potential is.
I want them to see a little boy 10 years old with Down syndrome on a bicycle. I want them to see him in school. I want them to see him on a family vacation. I want them to see her running a race, living life fully.
Could you do a favor for me?
I can try.
On page 86 of the book, you have this prayer that your father wrote. Could you read that?
Yeah, it's amazing. I just found this by coincidence, actually.
Beautiful prayer.
Almighty God, he wrote, we thank you. We thank you for giving us a chance to work on behalf of 170 million human beings on Earth with intellectual disabilities, for helping us to understand why you have created them, because they teach us to love one another, because they teach us to respect all of your creatures, of every race, every religion, every nation, of all ages, because they teach us that we are all, every one of us, dependent on you and on one another. Help us, Lord, to respect and love all of your creatures and all of your creation. Help us, Lord, because we are your servants. Amen.
Tim Shriver, thank you for being here. You're a great testament to your mother and father. And thanks for the book. It's really beautiful. Fully Alive, Discovering What Matters Most is available at bookstores everywhere and online, and it really is worth your time. It's a gorgeous book. When we return, it's the only all-boys school choir in the United States, and they're burning up the Billboard charts. Find out their secret when The World Over continues. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. It is a singular institution, the only Catholic boys' choir school in the United States. And now, after 50 years of existence, the boys of the St. Paul's Choir School in Cambridge, Massachusetts, have finally released an album, a Christmas collection entitled Christmas in Harvard Square, which premiered atop Billboard's classical charts. But for the boys of the St. Paul's Choir School, this is a way of life, not a one-off performance, as I discovered when I visited them recently. Here's an encore of our profile of the boys of St. Paul's Choir School. Take a look. From the hallways, it looks like any other middle school. Boys dragging things from lockers, racing to classes. But there's one big difference at the St. Paul's Choir School, as anyone who visits around noon is likely to hear. Ethereal young soprano voices fill St. Paul's Church each day for the Mass. And that sound is no accident. It is said that St. Paul's is not a school with a choir, but a choir with a school. The musical training here is as advanced as the academic curriculum. John Robinson is the music director, himself the product of several English cathedral choirs and the choir of St. John's College, Cambridge. What about that training lingered that you've passed on to these boys? This is not a typical choir room in America.
Absolutely right. It's a room that we're in many times during the day. Well, at least they're in it twice a day in preparation for the Mass that they sing. And a lot goes on in here emotionally, I think, as well as just in terms of music theory, that the boys are really learning to get behind the notes of the music and to what the music is saying about the piece in question, you know, what it's doing with the liturgy. And that's a big part of their preparation, is they're trying to understand that as well.
What's the most difficult thing about training these boys and boys in America where there isn't this tradition in place? You have it all over England, let's face it.
It's a funny thing. I find a lot of things are very easy in a way to communicate with the boys here, and particularly to do with what the music means and the prayer behind the music and how you get into shaping the emotions of the music and the phrases of the music. And to me, those are the most important things, really.
The training is rigorous, particularly for 4th through 8th grade boys. In addition to science, math, literature, and religion, the boys sing at Mass and at several rehearsals throughout the day, under the watchful eye of John Robinson.
At first, it definitely was very hard, and you always have to be just on the beat and everything. And after you get used to it, you just know what the circumstances that he likes and all that stuff. So I think I got a lot more used to it than at the beginning. It was very scary at first.
The tone is something we work on a lot.
Well, when we were in the 4th grade, I remember tune, dynamics, tune.
Robinson can be exacting in the rehearsal room.
Something doesn't sound quite right over there. Thomas, is that you? What's happened? It sounds different. Different to usual.
In a good way or a bad way?
Maximo, are you okay? You all right? Yeah. Huh.
Thomas, you were flat. You were flat the whole time. Just let's work on it. Let's work. Stand closer to me and you'll hear how it's supposed to sound, Thomas. I think we're ready now.
That it really is difficult to get a 9 or 10-year-old boy to understand how to sing something expressively when they barely want to look you in the face, because they're shy boys. They're looking at the ground half the time. So to get them to perform is a big deal.
What do they learn about life and the liturgy through this process of encountering the sacred music every day, in their mouths, in their breath?
I hope that they learn to give to God the best they can offer. I think that's what we're after here, is to really do this excellently and to be able to realize that for them, really the sky's the limit. They can get better at this all the time. If they're offering their gifts back to God and they're able to keep on working at them, that's a very strong thing to be building on.
Reverence and attention to the grandeur of the sacred music is stressed in the daily training. The boys are required to wear formal red cassocks and those lacy collars or ruffs for performances.
Sometimes the Velcro gets poked into you, but most of the time it just tickles.
The boys are also required to play piano, recorder, and sight read, a challenge for some, old hat for others.
In my old school, which is Holy Name Parish School, I did band, and I learned how to read the treble clef. When I first got here, I was ahead in music theory because I knew all the half notes and the notes in the treble clef. So I didn't find theory that hard at first, but once they started introducing stuff like compound time, I found it a tiny bit harder, but I'm still ahead.
No matter where they start, all the boys have been transformed by the experience.
Before I came to the school, I really liked the pop music, but it's changed because I'm starting to enjoy classical music more now, because it's just so many different key changes and dynamics.
I thought I did not enjoy singing. I didn't realize I might have been the loudest person at the church when I sang. The thing is, I love singing now because it's just a mental challenge to lift your heart and mind to God, as well as a spiritual challenge.
Father Michael Dre is the pastor of St. Paul's Church. and the head of the Harvard Catholic Center. He believes the daily exposure to sacred music touches the boys in another way.
And music is an opportunity to look into the divine, an opportunity to look into the heart of God, if you will, and to feel His presence in a new and in a significant way. And how music serves the liturgy, which is the central aspect of our Catholic faith, the Eucharist. The music contributing to that helps our people, whatever stage of their faith life they're in or at, to move beyond the ordinary, to move outside of the mundane into something where they encounter the Lord in a profound way.
Why do you only accept boys between the 5th and 8th grade?
Well, the school was founded as, we actually have a 4th grade. So the school was founded as being 5th to 8th grade, and we brought in the 4th grade because the boys' voices are beginning to change earlier in general on average. So we needed more time to be working with them before the voice change began in order to get them where they needed to be musically. But the real sort of goal of the school has always been that beautiful treble voice sound that you associate with different, King's College, Cambridge, that famous choir, or the Vienna Boy Choir, slightly different sort of a sound, but that it's that pure sound that the composers of a lot of the music we sing here had in mind when they were writing it.
And it's a tender, fleeting thing. People don't realize this is it's a very small window. It's between, what, 11 and 14 now, and then it's gone.
Exactly right, exactly right. It's like the Mayflower, isn't it? Sorry, the Mayfly, that fly which is alive in the spring for about one day, and then that's it, it's gone. And the treble voice is just like that. It's just passes, and then it's gone, and everybody weeps when their voices change.
Those whose voices are in transition graduate into the Schola Cantorum. Others join the men's choir.
We'll still be singing, but just in like a different tone, like alto, tenor, and bass.
Still other boys become altar servers. In the meantime, the choristers work on preserving their short-lived gift.
Try not to drink any type of milk or dairy products.
Drink a lot of water. I do every time I pass the water fountain.
Don't clear your throat, because that could hurt it.
I try not to yell and scream a lot, but sometimes, it's just, I can't help it.
Before those golden tones abandon them, the boys have recorded a new album, Christmas in Harvard Square. It commemorates the 50th anniversary of the choir school and was recorded at a tense moment. When this album was recorded in May, it was about a week apart, not quite a week, from this Black Mass that put Harvard Square and the university at the top of the headlines for weeks. Do you see any providential correlation between the recording of this Christmas album and this Black Mass that was announced for at Harvard?
Well, I think in many ways, yeah, I do. I really feel that in that moment, when we live our ordinary day lives, people of faith, that is, understand that Christ journeys with us and walks with us. But when we are under assault, as we were with the Black Mass, we really reach out to the Lord even more. And I think it was a providential thing for these young boys to realize that what they do each day at Mass, singing and serving at the Mass, the Eucharist, the center of our Catholic life, that they're not the only ones doing this. That there is a great community of believers the world over who truly love Jesus, love His Eucharistic presence, and take strength from that. And it was a catechetical moment for them to see so many come and to embrace this great gift that they embrace day in and day out.
Tell me about the repertoire of this Christmas album.
So it's both very familiar, so things like Hark the Herald Angels Sing, O Come All Ye Faithful, real Christmas classics, but also it touches quite deeply really on the history of Christmas music as well. So you get this beautiful polyphony.
The hope is that this will reawaken in many throughout the church the beauty of this great gift that we have in Gregorian chant, in polyphonic music, and how this was written to serve the liturgy, to worship God, and for those who are in the position to embrace the call of Benedict XVI, to really look at the beauty of the liturgy and to reform the liturgy.
The boys have their own hopes for the Christmas album and what it will engender in the listener.
I think I want people to, you know, just think about God when they listen to these and to worship Him in every way that's possible.
To make more people aware of God and His greatness.
I hope that they see how beautiful church music is and how beautiful God is in all His power and might.
Christmas in Harvard Square with the boys of the St. Paul's Choir School is available now wherever CDs are sold. Some beautiful music there. Before we conclude our Thanksgiving special, we're so very thankful to you, the audience that watches and supports the show each week. And we can never say that enough. So thank you for always being here for us and for the network. On this special occasion, I came across a poem by a boy that I consider pretty special. Here is the late poet and peacemaker MATTIE STEPANEK with a very moving meditation on all the things we should be thankful for.
On being thankful. Dear God, I was going to thank you tonight for a beautiful sunrise that was pink behind the fog down the hill, and for a wonderful rainbow that I ran under pointing to all my favorite colors, and for such a great sunset that sparkled orange across the water. I was going to thank you tonight for all of these special gifts, except that none of them happened. But do you know what? I still love you, God. And I have lots of other things that I can thank you for tonight, even if you didn't give those very special gifts to me today. It's okay, God, because I'll look for them all again when my tomorrow comes. Amen.
In full disclosure, I am part of a guild that is spreading Mattie's words and witness and praying for the advancement of his cause for canonization. Until next week, the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. Let me know what you thought of tonight's show, and also sign up for my free e-blast at RaymondArroyo.com. I'll send you video links to the show and some other special features. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we will see you again next week. In the meantime, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. See you next time. Bye now.